students are sleeping in a structure that was meant to be a toilet.
It is alleged.
Which the headmaster is saying is not true. Now, I'm not saying we shouldn't discuss other problems with secondary education, but I think that we need to do justice to this particular story because it is very alarming.
That's true.
And if it is found to be false, we have to also proceed with that level of caution and care. So let's talk to Clement Park, MP for Busa South, Deputy Ranking Member on the Education Committee, whose initial post drew our attention to the story. Honorable Park, thanks for joining us. Good morning.
Good morning, Bernard. Good morning to your panelists and to listeners.
Just a point of interest. Are you an old student of Ghana School?
No, I am not. I went to Sandema Secondary Technical School, Form 1 to 5. Then I proceeded to Nandon Secondary School for my 6th form.
Wonderful. So where did you first get this story from? And what did you do before you made the Facebook post? Because I saw your social media post, I think a couple of days ago on this. Where did you see the story and did you do any checks before you made a comment around it?
Well, the story is not my story. For the sake of transparency and for the record, a media house known as Rainbow Radio is the media house to be credited for the videos and then the story. Rainbow Radio has a reporter in Tamale, and from their own original story, before I even shared the videos that they sent to me to accompany the story, the reporter was doing an investigation on sanitation. And so, having gone to the campus of Ghana School to do his story on sanitation, he became aware that students were using themselves in the open. So based on that, he then sought to find out why that was the case. It was this that led him to the awareness as per his interaction with students that a facility that should be serving, a facility that should have been set up as a toilet facility, is not serving that purpose, but rather students have moved to occupy that space. So he then moved to that next level, went into that space, and I recorded the second video. So there are 3 clips that I shared. The first was the evidence showing that students were indeed practicing open defecation, because you could clearly see in that video human fecal matter. And the second was when he was then led to the space that, according to the students, should have been serving as a toilet facility. It was there that he then was informed that that space, those cubicles, are now being occupied by students because of challenges to do with accommodation. So he then recorded that clip, which I shared as well. Then the third clip was when he interviewed one of the students who is an occupant of the said space. And indeed, if you listen to the video, the student confirmed that he was one of the students who lived in that space, which ostensibly are cubicles that should be set up as toilet facilities. But you could visibly see in the video the mattresses, the top boxes, and anyone who is familiar with our secondary school system and the way, the kinds of items that we take to school, when you see the video, there can be a doubt that indeed this is a space that was being occupied. So that is how the story came to me, and this is the explanations that I got from the media house and the reporter who broke the story.
So you believe the story and the sequence to be true based on the video you saw and the narration of the journalist?
Well, I have no doubt, because I know for a fact that accommodation challenges as far as our secondary schools are concerned is present.
Okay, the headmaster tells me this morning that the story was staged. He says that the school has the highest number of accommodation facilities available in the northern region, and that in fact they have 2 uninhabited houses, and so that's point 1. So they have more boarding facilities than even students in boarding. Number 2, the space that the journalist did the filming, the film about the student talking, is a box room attached to a prefect's dormitory. So that place is not a toilet that was converted. It was initially designed in the 60s as some kind of toilet, but was not really used. And it's a box room where we know what a box room is, right? They keep excess straw boxes and things. So he believes that the journalist colluded with the student to just create the impression as though people were sleeping there, when in fact they actually have dormitories adjacent to the place. And so the whole story is concocted. What do you make of that?
Well, that is his rendition. I've seen a press release that indicates that there's going to be an investigation. And I believe that it will come out. But you see, off the bat, I can tell you that since this story broke, I have received calls that this phenomena, I will call it this phenomena, where spaces that ought not to serve as abodes for students are being used by students, is not confined or limited to what we have seen with regards to Ghana School. I can tell you that. And I can also tell you that I confronted the headmaster on Friday myself. I was to come to that because as a member of the Public Accounts Committee, we are currently undertaking our tour. So we were in the Northern Zone, and Ghana School was one of the schools that was cited in the Auditor General's report as far as pre-university institutions are concerned. So when the headmaster appeared before our committee and finished responding to the queries as per the Auditor General's report, I sought permission from the chair of the committee, the Honorable James Kulichi Abiji, to ask a public interest question to the headmaster based on the story that was done by Rainbow Radio and the videos that I had seen. Indeed, the headmaster confirmed that the said video, the cubicles, and the environment was his campus. He then went on when I asked him whether management had converted a toilet facility, because that was the story. If you read the original Rainbow story, it actually says that the school management has converted a toilet facility into a dormitory. When I asked him whether that was indeed the case, and this is on record because Public Accounts Committee proceedings are recorded, and I even have the clip of my interactions with the headmaster. His response was that management had not converted a toilet facility for students to live in as accommodation. And indeed, he made the same case, that they have sufficient space. They have sufficient space. And that they could even take in more students. So the accommodation challenges were not so pressing as to warrant the management of the school converting a facility that should serve as a toilet into a dormitory. So I then asked him, then why would students go and live in such a space if, as he is saying, there is adequate space in the normal dormitories for them to dwell in? And his response was that that space was a space in an older building that was not being used, and that those cubicles were not serving as toilet facilities, although if you look at the design, that is what they were supposed to say. In fact, he gave the narration that he was not even aware that students have moved in to occupy the said space. He went on to indicate that because the video had gone viral by then, and the media had become very interested, before he even came to attend to the sermons of the Public Accounts Committee, he had delegated the senior housemaster to take other media personnel to the space, and that they were going to initiate processes to find out how that happened. To quote him, "This happened on my blind side." So that was the response of the headmaster. And I confronted him with the issue directly, publicly, in front of everyone. Now, we have seen it playing out, and we have since seen the ministry through the Ghana Education Service asking him and the senior housemaster to step aside. I agree that an investigation ought to be conducted because we still have to find out why students would move into that space. I don't think that students on their own, without any pressure, would intentionally move in such a space. And I have no reason to doubt the students who granted the interview, because if you listen to the tapes, they are audible. The journalist asked them specific questions. The one student that was wearing the red check who responded indicated that he lived in that space, and he said it was as a result of challenges to do with space. So the investigation definitely ought to be conducted so that we would know the true facts of this matter. But Bernard, if you want my honest opinion, I would not be surprised that the headmaster would be right in indicating that management did not convert that space into accommodation. But I wouldn't also be surprised that students would move to dwell in that space, because the numbers that we have in many of the schools, as far as official documentation is concerned, would look as though there is adequate space. But every student coming with their chop box, their trunk, and all of those other accoutrements that we all know. We know of situations that dormitories that are supposed to hold 100 students are being assigned 150 and sometimes more students. And so it is also quite likely that although it is not official, but because the dormitories are crowded, and in these times of the year, particularly for the northern parts of the country, the heat could have caused seniors to hound juniors out, who would then try to find alternative spaces to also dwell in. In fact, I have heard stories of other schools where the seniors would hound the juniors out at night. The juniors would then take their mattresses to go and sleep in the classrooms and then wake up early to come back to the dormitory to prepare. The point I'm trying to make is that the issue of inadequate space is one that cannot be discounted, even as we wait for the investigation.
All right.
The question we should be asking is, what is adequate space? And are the numbers we have?
Yeah, well, I think I get you, and I think the investigation will clarify this. But I think the point to remember is the headmaster is insisting that there are 2 houses presently not occupied, so that this particular school has actually more space than it needs, if the headmaster is to be believed. So at least we can confirm.
The investigation will reveal all of this.
Fair enough.
Because if there are indeed 2 dormitories empty, then that should be established. And then we should know why students would leave dormitories unoccupied. Is it perhaps because they have not been given the green light to occupy them? And as I said, the issue of space and defining what is adequate space is one that I think should also be factored in this conversation.
All right. I think that's fair. The only point I couldn't quite clarify from the headmaster was the open-defecation case, because I didn't really get a direct answer on that when I pressed. He says they have 6 toilet facilities, and when he mentioned the numbers, and because I'm not able to sort of, you have to see the toilets to know if they are enough. So until a reporter goes there from our side, I am constrained. But this is very serious, and thank you for your interest in the story. I'm sure if the investigation is done and the results are out, you'll be one of the first people to know because of the position you occupy. So we'll probably talk to you again.
I will. But Bernard, between you and me, I think the decision to ask the headmaster and the senior headmaster to step aside is a bit rushed. I didn't think that that was the way to go. The initial assessment could have been done by the regional director of education. On the basis of that, then a decision could have been made whether they were culpable in one way or the other to warrant them being asked to step aside.
Okay, I'll take that from you. Thank you. That was Honorable Clement Apaak, MP for Busa South, and I think a deputy ranking member on the education committee. This just means that the leadership of the committee has 4, 2 on the majority, 2 on the minority. So he's the second on the minority. 5 minutes to 9.